Have you ever looked at your savings account and just felt stuck? Like you're on a treadmill, you're running as hard as you can, you're doing everything right, but you're just not getting anywhere? It's a really frustrating feeling, right? Well, I'm here to tell you it is not just in your head. The truth is, the fate of your personal savings is connected to these huge global forces. We're talking government policies, international politics, economic decisions made thousands of miles away. In this explainer, we're going to connect those giant geopolitical dots directly to the money in your bank account.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to tackle why saving money the old-fashioned way feels like a losing battle. Then we're going to zoom way out to understand the incredible power that governments wield over the entire economy. From there, we'll dig into this hidden danger called systemic risk, something most financial advice just completely ignores. After that, we'll bring it all back home and show you exactly how this affects your wallet. And finally, we'll talk about how you can start building your own financial lifeboat.
Okay, so let's just get right into it. That feeling of frustration. You put $100 in the bank, you come back a year later, and what's there? Still $100. Maybe 101 if you're really, really lucky. But in that same year, the price of everything around you, gas, groceries, rent, it's all gone up. So what's really going on here? Look, this isn't just a hunch. It's the official story. Even the American Bankers Association has been saying it out loud. When they say low rates are par for the course, they're basically telling you, get used to it. This is the new normal. For years, the interest you earn on your cash has been basically zero. So letting your money just sit there means you're, at best, standing still. But as we're about to see, in today's world, standing still is actually moving backward. And this is why. This is the silent killer of your wealth. It's called inflation. You see it every single day. The price of gas shoots up, your energy bill is higher, your grocery receipt looks longer. Your $100 is still $100, but what it can actually buy is shrinking day by day. That gallon of milk your dollar used to cover, now it only buys you half a gallon. The number in your account hasn't changed, but you have definitely lost wealth. And this really forces you to rethink what losing money even means. We think of it as the number in our account going down, but the real loss, the one that truly matters, is the loss of purchasing power. You know, the old saying, a penny saved is a penny earned, made sense when a dollar was actually backed by something physical, like gold. Today, it's just backed by a promise, and that promise is being stretched thinner and thinner. So this leads us to the big dilemma, doesn't it? You know that leaving your money in cash is like a slow bleed, but then you look over at the stock market, and it feels like a total casino. It's way up one day, crashing the next, just full of crazy volatility. So if cash isn't safe and the stock market doesn't feel safe, where on earth are you supposed to turn? Well, to answer that, we have to understand who's making the rules of the game. To get to the real answers, we have to zoom out, like way out from our own bank accounts, and look at the biggest players on the entire financial stage, sovereign nations. We're talking about governments and their central banks. Their decisions create the economic weather system that every single one of us has to live in. And they operate using what we call sovereign fundamentals. Just think of these as the three giant levers a government can pull to control the economy. You've got fiscal policy, that's Congress deciding to send out stimulus checks or cut taxes. Then you've got monetary policy, that's the Federal Reserve cranking up interest rates or, printing money. And then there's foreign policy. That's everything from trade deals to sanctions, which can send the price of oil and other goods through the roof. And here's the kicker. These big picture policies are not just abstract ideas discussed on the news. They cast a massive shadow over everything. Because the US dollar is the engine of the global financial system, the choices made in Washington, D.C. on these three things directly impact every business and every single person's financial life, no matter where they live on the planet. Now, how did we get here? Well, for a long time, the US dollar was actually backed by physical gold. It was stable. But in 1971, that link was completely severed. From that day on, the dollar's value was based on one thing, and one thing only: trust. Then came the 2008 financial crisis, and a new tool entered the scene: quantitative easing, which is just a fancy term for creating trillions of new dollars out of thin air. This history is absolutely essential to understanding the risks we're all facing today. So all of this has created a kind of risk that most financial advice just doesn't even talk about. We're all taught to worry about picking the wrong stock, But what happens when it's not the stock that's the problem, but the entire stock market itself? Okay, this is such a critical point. Non-systemic risk is the classic, don't put all your eggs in one basket idea. Let's say one company has a terrible quarter. If that's the only stock you own, you're in big trouble. But systemic risk, That's totally different. That's when the entire system is in crisis. That's when the basket itself is broken. And in that situation, it doesn't matter how well you diversified your eggs, they're all going down together. Now, think about the number one piece of financial advice you always hear. Diversify, buy a mutual fund, buy an ETF, track the S&P 500. All of that advice is designed to protect you from one single company failing. People go to sleep at night feeling safe because their 401k is spread across hundreds of different companies. But here's the thing, that does absolutely nothing to protect you if the entire system hits an iceberg. And that is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? It completely challenges the foundation of how we're all taught to save for retirement. We're told to just bet on the long-term rosy outcome of the market. But what if an entire market, an entire country's system, can go sideways for decades? And this isn't some wild theory. Let's look at a real-world example, Japan. Imagine it's 1985, you're 50 years old, and your financial planner tells you to put your retirement money in a nice, diversified portfolio of Japanese stocks. Sounds like perfectly sensible advice, right? Well, fast forward 27 years, and the entire market is down 14%. 27 years? That's not just a bad decade. That is a retirement plan completely destroyed. And here is the real wake-up call. The playbook Japan used back then looks eerily similar to what we've seen in the US and Europe more recently. A massive housing bubble pops, and the government's response is round after round after round of quantitative easing, money printing, that never actually fixes the deep underlying problems. This shows us that just blindly betting that the system will always go up in the long run is a huge, huge gamble. All right, so we've talked about these enormous ideas: sovereign power, systemic risk, Japan's lost decades. Now let's bring it all right back down to earth. Let's connect these giant forces directly to your retirement account, your savings account, and the actual money in your wallet. So here's how the chain reaction works, plain and simple. Step 1, the economy gets shaky, so the government decides to stimulate it with QE. Step 2, this floods the system with trillions of new dollars. It's basic supply and demand. When you flood the market with something, its value drops. So each individual dollar you own is now worth less. And step 3, the result is that it takes more of those cheapened dollars to buy the exact same stuff. Your purchasing power gets hammered. And here's the other piece of the puzzle. That 0.01% interest rate you see in your savings account, that is not an accident. It is a deliberate policy choice. By forcing interest rates down to near zero, the government makes it incredibly cheap for big companies and people to borrow money and spend it, which they hope will juice the economy. But this policy has a clear victim: you, the saver. It actively punishes you for being responsible, all to help out borrowers. And you know who the biggest borrower of all is? The government itself. Now, I know, hearing all this can feel pretty intense, maybe even a little bit scary, but the point of this is not to create fear. It's to create clarity, because it's only when you have clarity that you can stop being a passive passenger on this crazy ride and start becoming someone who can proactively protect themselves. It's about taking back control. Here's the best way to think about it. You cannot steer the Titanic. You have zero control over the giant iceberg of systemic risk or what governments are going to do next, but you have 100% control over whether or not you build a lifeboat. The story of the Titanic isn't really about an iceberg. It's a story about not having enough lifeboats. Your lifeboat is everything that you can control. So what is this lifeboat exactly? Well, it's not a hot stock tip or some magic asset. It's your own personal financial policy. It starts with actually understanding the real risks we've just talked about. It means you stop blindly believing that a diversified 401k is all you need. It means you make decisions based on discipline and a clear strategy, not on fear when the market drops or greed when it soars. And it means you have a real plan to protect your wealth from both the slow burn of inflation and the shock of a sudden crash. So, when it all comes down to it, the single greatest asset you can possibly have in this environment is your own knowledge. As your education goes up, your risk and your fear goes way down. The whole point is to make that shift, to go from being a passive saver who's just hoping for the best to becoming a proactive, informed investor who understands the real rules of the game. And so we'll leave you with this question to think about. For our parents' and grandparents' generations, safety meant a government bond or money tucked away in a bank. But in a world of systemic risk, where currency can be devalued by choice, we have to rethink that entire definition. Maybe true safety isn't about avoiding risk altogether. Maybe it's about having the knowledge and the strategy to navigate it. So what does real financial safety look like for you now?